Hello and welcome to the European Football Show's Europa League preview. In the build-up to the upcoming game week, we're dissecting each fixture with an assortment of guests from around the world. Today we have Atalanta versus Olympiakos. It's a really exciting fixture between two sides who have yet to ever play each other in European competition. And to look at the Italian outfit, I'm joined by Tom Underhill, co-founder of First Time Finish, and hard at work producing his debut book, The Working Hands of a Goddess, the tactics, community, and culture behind Gasparini's Atalanta. Hey, Tom, how are we doing?
Very well, thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to previewing a big match next week.
Yeah, that it is indeed. And let's dive straight into it because it's been a rather eventful winter for Atalanta. They brought in Jeremy Boga from Sassuolo, Valentin Mihaila, another winger who came in on loan from Parma. But they also lost quite a big star in fullback Robert Gosens, the German international who has really skyrocketed his career at Atalanta. And on top of that, we also see Josip Ilicic now ruled out indefinitely after going for another spout of depression. So we here at BTL all wish him well in his recovery. And I mean, how do you see these really notable omissions impacting Atalanta's chances in the Europa League? Because these are two players who have played such a crucial role in Gasparini's Atalanta.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of Gasparini's time there, go back to 2016, I think anyone putting together kind of like a best 11 would have Gosens at left back and Ilicic as one of the forwards or attacking midfielders. But in truth, neither have really featured a great deal this season anyway. Like Ilicic has played just 800 minutes in Serie A and Gosens even less at just 460. Gosens has been injury related. As you say, Ilicic had some kind of personal issues, but also he at 33, he is an aging kind of player, and he's always been like that anyway. He's always been injury prone. He's always been susceptible to kind of taking spells out. So they haven't really had much of an impact this season anyway. So I don't believe that their absences will be of a particular disturbance to this match. I think the deeper issues lie in that there are quite a few other injuries, and with that has also come like bad drops in form for key players. So captain Rafael Toloi has been in and out the side to the season. He hasn't featured for sort of since late December. Hans Hatterboer is making kind of the odd substitute appearances, but looks a very different player to the one who absolutely tore Valencia apart just before the COVID break in Champions League. And in Sunday's defeat to Cagliari, Duvan Zapata returned from injury, coming off the bench at halftime, and then 20 minutes later was subbed again, what looked like to be an aggravation of the same muscle injury. So all of a sudden, it starts to be a bit of a pile of expectation on Luis Muriel, who of course is the other striker to Zapata. And Muriel has always thrived when the attention is kind of off him, is when he can come off the bench and he can stretch a defence in the last 30 minutes. I mean, over the past 3 seasons, his goal per 90-minute record is absolutely frightening because he doesn't play many 90 minutes. He's only playing kind of 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. And it's kind of forcing that he's probably going to have to start, which doesn't necessarily see the best of him. And again, anyone who saw the defeat to Cagliari at the weekend will have seen just how out of form Ruslan Malinovsky is. Obviously a very important player, attacking midfielder. A Gasparini's system, whether it's a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-3, requires at least one or two creative outlets to be behind a striker, and for them to be not just filling a role, but kind of contributing to creating 5, 6, even 7 shots a match. So if you see a drop in form in one of those players, then it really does kind of derail the whole thing.
Yeah, and earlier on you mentioned that defeat to Cagliari, and it's been quite a theme in the last few matches. I looked at the statistics at the time of recording. They've of course failed to win any of their last 3 Serie A matches, and in the Champions League, it's also not gone as planned. Just 1 win in 6 matches, and although they were pretty competitive throughout, Manchester United definitely rode their luck in 2 wins. They ultimately didn't get over the line, and which is such a crucial funds for a club like Atalanta to continuously play in the Champions League and what that can do for this club. So let's talk about Gasparini then again, because obviously he's now been in the side for 5 seasons, which is an unusual amount of time for any top club in Europe. And he's taken this side to extreme heights. I mean, he came in when this was a mid-table or even a relegation outfit and turned them into what is the side that could potentially even at times look like a competitor for the Serie A Scudetto. But of course, this is a side that's still yet to win a major title since what is 1963. So is the Europa League perhaps a place where they could target this all-elusive championship?
I mean, looking at their recent form, I can totally understand why people would look at it and say that they're burning out, or that they're kind of in the same way that people look at, say, like Marcelo Bielsa teams playing not in a similar way, but a comparable way to Gasperini's system, and look at it and think they've kind of reached the peak, or they're on the way down. I'm not sure it's necessarily a point that they're burnt out or that they've even reached their ceiling. I think it's more a case of these unfortunate injuries and COVID absences really disrupting their momentum. They had some really great wins this season. They beat Napoli 3-2 during December. They beat Juventus 1-0 in Turin, where Duvan Zapata was absolutely fantastic, and he got injured soon after that. But then since the start of December, these absences, particularly through COVID, have really piled up, and they've only won 3 times in the past kind of 2-3 months. They drew recently 0-0 against Inter and Lazio back-to-back, which, to not lose either of those games is very commendable. Typically, Gasperini sides would absolutely fly out the traps and attack them full pelt. But both of those games were really heavily affected by COVID absences, and that in both matches, 5 or 6 teenagers were on the pitch at one time. During the Inter match, Gasperini ended up having to play Joachim Melo, who's obviously a wing back, and then the other left wing back, Giuseppe Pizzella, playing them in forward positions because he just had no players to call upon, and they took 2-0 out of that. So it was very commendable. The problem with that is, of course, is that having to play unfavoured personnel means that momentum is lost, and that they can't really get to build that same kind of groundswell of form that, say, like Juventus have, and Juventus have now overtaken them. So it kind of has hampered their season. Can they win the Europa League? I mean, with a fully firing squad, I would say, yeah. I mean, with Zapata leading the line, and usually you'd have Mario Pasalic and Malinovsky. If they're at full form, they will rip any defense in Europe to shreds when they're flying. Doesn't matter that whether Ilicic is playing, doesn't matter the fact that they lost Papu Gomez. The Gasperini will find a way to rip any defense apart. But we don't know the extent of Zapata's injury yet, and I'm not sure they have the kind of depth to challenge some of the supremely talented bigger sides in the competition. So, yeah, unlikely, but you can never say never with Gasperini.
Yeah, and it seems like you said there, it's very much an open bag, depending on what personnel is available and what Atalanta we see on the day. And that leads us nicely into this next question here as we summarize all of these shows. If you had to just in 1 to 2 sentences say what is definitively Atalanta's strength that can see this win this matchup and potentially even the entire Europa League, what would it be?
See, normally I would say it's the intensity and the ferocity of which they'll attack. They can just blow any team away on their day, and they'll come out of the first 30 minutes and score 3 times. But I think with the different kind of personnel that they're going to have to play, I mean, the weekend they played a 4-2-3-1, which Gasperini hasn't started with a 4 at the back in 5 years. So it shows how much he's having to change. So with that in mind, I think rather than attacking so kind of quickly or being as aggressive as usual, I actually think controlling the midfield is a key part. It might be very easy to try and launch the ball and get Muriel in behind early. But if you've got a midfield of Remo Freuler and Tone Koopmeiners, it's more than good enough to control the match. So I'd actually say a bit of quality in midfield and taking control would probably be the best way for them to win this match.
Okay, and if that's the strengths, then let's look at the flip side on the weaknesses. I mean, you mentioned, of course, these injury issues that the Nerazzurri are facing. Is that what you would kind of pin as the major weakness, or is there something else potentially that is even a bigger issue for Gasperini?
I mean, it's not so much an issue. I mean, the injuries are the biggest issue, and I wouldn't so much call this an issue, but silly mistakes has always been a theme of Gasperini's teams, let alone this Atalanta team. He wants his centre-backs to play high-risk high risk and reward football. He wants them to be aggressive and fly into tackles and to try and intercept passes ahead of their given man. And that will always bring with it the chance of mistakes. I mean, Mary Demiral, who's obviously on loan at Atalanta from Juventus, has been exceptional this year. And even Jose Palomino, who Atalanta fans I know for a few years have been very unsure on. He's a bit of a rash, kind of gives away a lot of penalties, but even he's been very good this season. But the nature of these kind of aggressive centre-backs means that get it wrong and you will be punished. You give up high-quality chances. So, yeah, I'd probably say there.
All right, brilliant. So that was Tom Underhill going deep into Atalanta's chances. But now let's avert our attention to the visitors, Olympiakos Piraeus. To do so, I'm joined by Kostas Lianos, sports journalist for The Sun and Gate 7 international contributor. Kostas, how are we?
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for the invite. A big hello to your lovely audience. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Kostas, it's brilliant to have you on, and let's get right into it. I mean, the reigning Greek champions, they're now under manager Pedro Martins for the third season in a row. And in his time in charge, they've won the Greek Super League in all of those campaigns. And they're even in the Europa League, putting up a respectable showing. In 2019-20, they even knocked Arsenal out of the competition. So Kostas, what do you entrust this side? And do you think in a difficult draw against Atalanta, they could once again produce fireworks?
Well, it's funny because at the time of the recording, Olympiakos seemed ready to crash out of the Greek Cup as they are 1-1 with Panetolikos at the Giorgos Karaiskakis, which means Panetolikos are 3-2 ahead on aggregate. We're on stoppage time right now, actually. So if Olympiakos don't score, they are out of the Greek Cup. So it's going to be very interesting to see in what kind of in what kind of mental state each team is going to be at, because Atalanta are also playing Fiorentina tomorrow in the Coppa Italia quarterfinals. That's the time of recording, guys. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Dusan Vlahovic obviously not playing for Fiorentina, but then they are going to face Vlahovic on Sunday in a derby against Juventus, which is the same day Olympiakos are playing against AEK Athens at the Giorgos Karaiskakis. So we got two big games for Fiorentina and another big game for Olympiakos. It's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to affect each team. Now, in the general sense, what happened after the draw? Olympiakos arguably got the worst draw possible because no team plays like Atalanta. No one has the same tempo. No one has the same momentum. No one has the same rhythm that Atalanta have. They have been on fire the last few seasons. They have Gianpiero Gasperini, the manager, has basically revolutionized Italian football with his 3-4-2-1 formation that he rarely drops. Basically, a lot of Italian teams are getting on the bandwagon, and slowly Italian football's conservative catenaccio approach is like somehow dwindling. On the other hand, Atalanta didn't get a good draw exactly, because they're facing a team with quite an identity in Europe, quite a lot of experience in Europe. Let's put it this way. Ever since the 2007-2008 season, when Olympiakos finally won an away game in the Champions League against Werder Bremen in the Westfalenstadion, 2007-2008 season, since then, Olympiakos have made it to the last 16 of either the Champions League or the Europa League 9 times in 13 attempts. They have also made it past the group stages of the Champions League or the Europa League 12 times in 13 attempts. So not a good draw, not a good draw for Olympiakos, not a good draw for Atalanta either.
Yeah, a very difficult one. You speak about Olympiakos as the club, their experience in Europe. But I mean, when we look at this squad, also the amount of experienced veterans is just unprecedented. You have a center back partnership of Manolas and Socrates, two veterans in the squad, 30 and 33 respectively. Then you move up even further up the pitch, and then it doesn't even get any younger there. I mean, 37-year-old attacking midfielder Matteo Valbuena. He's been around the block playing for some big European clubs. Again, 35-year-old Youssef El Arabi putting in the goals. So how do you think this either helps or hinders them? Because you spoke about Atalanta's high-tempo football, and it's not necessarily what you want against a side that is pretty old for making it to the Europa League last knockout stages.
We should tell the audience that Olympiakos have scored a second time with Giorgos Masouras, and it seems like they're going through to the Greek Cup semifinals. which is huge for their. It's huge
would you look at that?
For their confidence. It's huge for confidence. If they had crashed out of the Greek Cup, that would have been huge for Atalanta, right there. Yes, a lot of good players at Olympiakos, a lot of good units. I keep telling that to my Gate 7 international colleagues. But the thing is that they haven't really managed to gel. They haven't really managed to unite, really. You mentioned the amazing 2019-2020 season where Olympiakos barely missed out on the Europa League quarterfinals with an incredible team. It was really an incredible team Pedro Martins had. Ever since then, Olympiakos have been marred by coronavirus and by the by the consequences the coronavirus pandemic brought on them. The lack of preseason, a lot of injuries because there hasn't been a preseason. Arguably, their star man, Kostas Fortounis, has dealt with serious injury twice because he barely had any preseason to deal with. That team has gone through quite a lot, really, and that hasn't really allowed them to really unite, to really gel, to really click on the pitch, which is really going to work in Atalanta's favor. And because of that, we haven't really managed to find a formation for Olympiakos to play at. Ever since Ernesto Valverde joined in 2008, he established the 4-2-3-1 formation with an attacking midfielder working as the most important player, arguably, on the pitch. Whereas now we keep switching to a 4-2-3-1 and a 3-4-3, with the latter being the most problematic. Let's put it this way. Let's see how Olympiakos have been doing in Europe statistically this season in a group with Eintracht Frankfurt, Royal Antwerp, and Fenerbahce. Quite a difficult group, but then again, the Olympiakos of the 2019-2020 season would have easily gone through that group, would have easily finished first. We had 1.63 goals per game scored, 1.13 goals conceded, an XG of 1.55 goals for Olympiakos, an XG of 1.15 goals conceded for Olympiakos, 11 shots per game, 38.6 on them on target, and an average possession of 53%. It's going to be very interesting to see how they go with Atalanta, because the 4-2-3-1 formation, you could imagine them just trying to get a result, whereas with a 3-4-3 formation, it doesn't really work. But at the same time, they will wait for Atalanta to get in midfield before applying pressure. They will not go at the back, because Atalanta will use that to build from the back and hit them very quickly and very precisely, which is what they want. They want to draw attackers in defense. But what Olympiakos are going to do with a 3-4-3 formation is wait in midfield for them to get the ball and probably steal the ball and counter. So if Olympiakos play with a 3-4-3 formation, which in my opinion, the Atalanta fans should pop open a Prosecco if that happens, pressure in midfield and use the counterattack. But in general, Olympiakos are going to go for the counter. I'm sorry, I'm waffling, but I'm going to close with this one. Atalanta have one goal in Bergamo, and that is to win the game with a scoreline safe enough to turn the Giorgos Karaiskakis second fixture into as much a formality as possible. Olympiakos are looking for a win, they're looking for a draw, and not to lose by much.
Yeah, and not to lose by much is obviously always a difficult task when you look at the attacking talent available at Atalanta. So then, Kostas, before we end this off, we already spoke with Tom about his score prediction, but what do you see going on? Do you think that Olympiakos has it in them to make it to the latter stages in the Europa League, to make it one round further, or will this be the end of the road for the Greek champions?
Well, Atalanta are the absolute favorites. Olympiakos have very few chances of going through. We've seen Atalanta putting together some amazing performances the last few years in Europe. This season, they barely missed out on the last 16 of the Champions League. Took Manchester United to hell and back. Those two games against United could have gone either way. You cannot count Olympiakos out, but I feel like the Bergamo game is going to play a huge part in this. If Atalanta just cruise through, then that's it, really. If there's like a scoreline of 2-0 or maybe 3-1, that's it, really, pretty much. It's really going to depend on the Bergamo game, but I think I'm just going to go with my instincts and I'm just going to play it safe. And I'm going to say that that Atalanta are going to go through. When it comes to scoreline, I don't know, maybe a 2-0 victory. But Atalanta are missing two important players in Robin Gosens and Josip Ilicic. And I would like to take this time and wish Josip Ilicic all the best. But still, they're a very strong team. A team, not a team of units, a team. That's what it is. Whereas Olympiakos are a group of units that have yet to click.
Brilliant. Thank you. This is awesome analysis. And I'm personally more invested in this game now. So I think you did your job.